Morning, everybody. We're just waiting for everybody to be able to join, and then we'll kick off in just a minute or so. Okay, I think we will make a start. Hi everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm Sally Dickinson, I'm here from the Berkeley Foundation, and welcome to our webinar on the Resilience Fund. So we are recording this afternoon's session, and we will be distributing that and the slides afterwards, and there'll also be a link on our website. So if there are colleagues or other organisations that you're working with who you think would be interested in this but haven't been able to attend today, then please do feel free to share and pass on to them, because we want to spread the word as far as possible, really. So in terms of the agenda for the session, next slide, Christina.
Bear with, Sally, it worked just a second ago and now it's not. Oh, no.
Well, I'm going to start off with, I'll introduce the foundation team who we've got on the call today, and then I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview of the foundation itself, who we are, kind of where we've come from, and the type of funder we are for anybody who doesn't know us, and our strategy moving forward. And then my colleague Claire, here we go, colleagues Claire and Kim are going to talk through the second year of the Resilience Fund, which we're launching this week, the kind of objectives of the fund, the application process, and the timelines involved. So hopefully that'll give you a really clear sense of what we're looking to achieve, how and whether that might dovetail with what it is that you're looking to achieve for your organisation and how you would put an application in. We've got some kind of frequently asked questions that we'll run through, which might answer any questions that you have, but you are also very welcome to and encouraged to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be able to pick them up from there throughout the call, and we've got time at the end to answer your questions, basically. We're looking really on this call to answer questions that are generally applicable. So if you've got something that is very specific to your organisation, it might be that that's better picked up outside this call, and we've got contact details at the end, so you will be able to contact us. But also, if there are any questions that are raised in the Q&A that we're not able to get to, we will make sure that we follow up with individuals and pick those up outside of the session as well. So in terms of introductions, as I said, I'm Sally Dickinson. I'm head of the Berkeley Foundation. I've been working for the organisation for about 9 years now, and we're joined on the call by Claire, Christina and Kim. So Christina is one of our partnerships managers, and designed and has kind of led on the first year of the Resilience Fund. So if any of you attended our webinars this time last year, yeah, you will be familiar with Christina. We've got Claire, who is stepping into my role in about a month's time when I head off on maternity leave in the middle of August. And then we've got Kim, who is in the same room as Claire. If you could just swivel the camera around and say hello. Hi, Kim. And Kim has joined us just this week, she's going to be moving into Claire's role essentially, so as another partnerships manager, and Kim is going to be the kind of main lead person and main point of contact for the Resilience Fund over the next year. So if you're getting in touch with us, having conversations with us about your applications, you know, Kim's very likely to be the person that you're talking to. So I just wanted to start, for anybody who isn't familiar with the Berkeley Foundation, with a little bit of background on who we are. So we're the corporate grant making foundation that was set up by the Berkeley Group. The Berkeley Group being kind of FTSE 100 property development company working across London, the southeast of England and in Birmingham. We were set up by Berkeley Group back in 2011 to support young people, communities in the areas where Berkeley works. And that underlying kind of mission and kind of focus of our work has remained pretty consistent ever since then. The kind of the why of why the foundation was set up. So the company was doing various kind of different pieces of community investment and work with charities in the voluntary sector at the time, but there was no kind of clear strategy. There was nobody bringing that all together and kind of creating something greater than the sum of its parts. So the foundation was really set up to kind of channel that energy, to grow the amount of community investment work that was being done, and to provide a really, really clear focus for that work. So since then, that focus has been all about supporting young people and communities to thrive. And over 11 years now, we've given, and these are our 10-year stats, so actually I can update them. We've been privileged enough to give more than £26 million to support charities in our local communities. And through those charity partnerships, we've reached over 45,000 people. And the one thing I'd say about that is that we really put a focus on and privilege kind of deep, long-term partnerships and depth rather than breadth in terms of impact. So we really like to work with organisations for the long term, and we like to work with organisations that, you know, that stick with young people and communities over a period of time and are able to create often really transformative change in their lives. A kind of final really important part of what we do alongside the kind of funding and grant making relationships is involving the company's staff. So we have kind of around 60% of Berkeley staff getting involved in our work each year, which is something that we're really proud of. That looks like fundraising, it looks like volunteering, payroll giving, and over the last 10 years, staff have raised almost £7 million directly to our charity partners. So wherever we can, we're looking to make sure that we're adding as much value as possible to our partnerships over and above the funding that we can provide. Lots of that is through that unique relationship we have with the company, but equally that's about, you know, learning and networks and bringing people together and making connections. And you'll hear a little bit later on about the learning programme that we are establishing as part of this Resilience Fund. And we just met for the first time last week with our 10 year one Resilience Fund partners. So we'll be looking to do something very similar in year 2. So moving on to our 2030 strategy, which we've just launched. It's called A Force for Change. It's available on our website, so I'm not going to go through this in lots of detail, but I just wanted to touch on our overall vision and our 5 impact goals, just to show you how this piece of work fits into that big picture. So our overall vision is that young people in their communities will have the tools and resources that they need to thrive and be a force for change in the world. And to work towards that vision, we've set ourselves 5 impact goals. So we've got a safe place to call home, which is really the focus of all of our work around housing and homelessness, and particularly homelessness prevention and youth homelessness. We've got journey to employment, which is about helping young people to build the skills that they're going to need for the workplace, and then also breaking down barriers and helping them to access real sustainable employment opportunities. We've got health and well-being, which is focused on both improving people's physical and mental health and well-being. And then new to this strategy, we've got 2 new goals, which are youth leadership, which as it says on the tin is going to be all about helping young people to build up their leadership skills, supporting initiatives that are helping young people to have a voice on the issues that matter to them and to make a change, to kind of help bring about change in their local areas. And then the 5th goal is a resilient voluntary sector. And this is really recognizing that none of what we do, none of this would be possible without the fantastic voluntary sector organisations that we work with and work through, but also that our communities are fundamentally stronger with those organisations in place. And actually, not just through the pandemic, but through everything that's happened over the last 10 years and longer. There have been lots of challenges to the resilience of small and medium-sized charities. And one of the things that we want to do through this strategy and through this fund is to help, really brilliant organisations to invest in their resilience, in their organisational development and in their futures, so that we know that you will all be around to support your communities, for long into the future. So that's really what I wanted to say about the strategy, and that's where the Resilience Fund fits in. So we launched the first year back in October 21, and we had a really good response, and we've ended up with, I think, 10 fantastic partner organisations for year 1, and Christina is in the process of kind of getting those partnerships set up. And as I said, we've just kind of come together as a cohort for the first time last week. And Claire, in the meantime, has been planning for the second year, and we've just opened for applications. So Claire, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Sally. So welcome everyone, thanks for joining us. As you've heard from Sally, the Resilience Fund forms part of our new strategy, and it represents a £900,000 investment in strengthening the voluntary sector over 4 years. Sally's already helpfully provided a bit of context behind the Resilience Fund and why we've set it up. Essentially, it provides an opportunity for organisations to carve out time and space to start thinking about and building their organisational resilience. And the reason for that is that they will be around to support young people in their communities for many years to come. Next slide, please. Oh, yes, thank you. No, sorry, Christina, you were right. That's it, great. I'll just give you a quick overview of the fund. It opened last week and it will be open until the end of October. We are offering grants of up to 30,000 over 2 years, and funding will be accompanied by a learning programme that Sally mentioned. And this is really being set up to enable partner organisations to come together, to network, to collaborate and learn from each other. And then also when there is an alignment with the needs of partner organisations and skills across the Berkeley Group staff, we will look to add value by providing some pro bono skills and expertise as well. The focus of the fund this year is on supporting organisational development of organisations and really building their resilience. So we are looking to fund organisational development work rather than programme delivery. And the aim of the fund this year is to support those organisations that are working or delivering mental health services targeted at young people from Black and minoritized communities. And the rationale for this focus is really down to the increased need among young people for mental health support post the pandemic. And we also know that the pandemic has had a greater negative impact on young people from these communities, and historically funding to organisations is often limited. It's also worth me just pointing out the priorities of the fund. So we've got, we're looking to prioritise funding for organisations that are led by people from Black and minoritized communities, and those working with young people at key transition points in their lives. So that might be young people leaving the care or the justice system, or transitioning between school and college. So I thought it might be useful to just touch on what we mean by organisational resilience, because I think we're all very aware that resilience can look very different from one organisation to the next. And as Sally said, we actually met with our Year 1 partners last week for our first learning session, and one of them referred to a really interesting metaphor for organisational resilience. They associated it with bamboo scaffolding. You'll see we've got a nice image of that here. Basically, it's got a solid structure, but it has this element of flexibility within it. And I think the key point was that it needs to be constructed well and have strong foundations in place before it can fulfill its purpose. And I think that's spot on, really. When an organisation's foundations are in place, when they've got things like a robust plan and strong governance and leadership, they're often in a stronger position to achieve their objectives and be around to support their communities in the longer term. So our ultimate goal for this fund is that participating organisations have an improved ability to anticipate, prepare for, respond and adapt to incremental change and sudden disruptions in order to survive and prosper. How, if you could go on to the next slide, please, Christina. Thanks. How you get to this goal is dependent on your own organisational needs and also the foundations that you already have in place. And we're really keen to walk with you on this journey. So whether that's supporting you to develop a fundraising strategy because you need to increase your financial sustainability, or whether it's supporting you to improve your IT systems because they may not be fit for purpose. We'll be looking at your applications and considering funding projects that are working towards one or more of these 5 building blocks. So we'd really encourage you to show us through your applications how your projects align with them. Next slide, please, Christina. Thank you. In terms of how you might think about resilience for your organisations, I think there are a number of tools that can help you identify these needs, and we have listed some of these in the funding guidelines, so do take a look if you haven't already. But we've shared some questions here that CAF has sort of published, and I think they really help to get you to start thinking about your organisational resilience and what it means for you. So ask yourself, what are the hardest things for you to get funding for? If you had a spare month and worked for your charity but didn't have to do your day job, what would be the best use of your time? What underlying issues does your charity have that it either doesn't have the time or expertise to fix? And finally, what are the biggest challenges to your efficiency? I think this is a really useful exercise, reflecting on these questions with your team and within your organisations, and the responses to these questions can give you the sort of foundations to put together a solid application to the fund. Next slide, please. Great. So we've got the eligibility criteria here. I'm not going to go through each one because they are in the funding guidelines, but I just wanted to highlight the key changes from the first year of the fund. And it's really around the focus. So we're looking to support organisations that are delivering mental health services targeted at people, young people from Black and minoritized communities. And by targeted, we mean more than 50% of your organisation's beneficiaries. Okay, yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. And now I'm just going to pass over to Kim, and she's just going to talk you through the online application process.
Hi everyone. Okay, so let's get on to the application process. So once you familiarize yourself with the guidelines and criteria, and you've thought about what resilience kind of means for you and your organization, you can begin the application process via our website. So when you go onto the application form, first of all, you will complete an eligibility check. All questions are compulsory here, and you can use the yes, no toggle to select your response. Slide, thank you. If you're eligible, you'll be taken through to the full application form. The first section asks for your personal and organization details, and then there are just 11 questions for you to respond to about your project and your organization. So we have created some application guidance notes for you to refer to as you work through the application form. These should give you a good idea of what we're looking for from your responses. So again, I would encourage you to refer to these notes before submitting your application. And finally, you'll be asked to upload a project budget in the supporting documents section. We have provided a budget template in the application guidance notes, so please take a look at this and make sure that your budget includes an annual breakdown of costs. If you have any issues accessing the form, please contact us at info@berkeleyfoundation.org.uk or myself, which you'll see at the end of the slide. Pass you back.
Great, thanks, Kim. Okay, so in terms of what we're looking for from your applications, we will be scoring each application against a set of 5 criteria, and I've outlined these in the funding guidelines, and I'll just talk through them now. So the first one is around organisational need. So we're really looking for evidence in your applications that your organisation has a clear resilience need, and that this aligns with one or more of the building blocks that we talked about previously. The second is around organisational impact. So we're really looking to work with organisations where our funding and our partnership will have a transformational impact on that organisation. So in your applications, please do tell us how you envisage your organisation becoming more resilient as a result of the project and the work that you want to do with our funding. The third one is around feasibility of the project. So here we'll be looking at your project budgets. We'll be considering the timescales that you're anticipating for this work, and also your organisation's capacity to deliver it. So as Kim said, there is some guidance on the project budget, and I would encourage you to have a look at that before submitting one. And then we move on to alignment with the fund's theme and criteria. So this is thinking about and considering how closely your organisational activities align with the focus of this year's fund. So supporting young people with their mental health, young people specifically from Black and minoritized communities. And we'll also be, I think there's one question in the form which asks you to detail those activities, tell us about what you are doing to support young people in this way, and give us an idea of the proportion of your overall work that this represents. And then finally, we'll be assessing your applications against your approach to diversity, equity and inclusion. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll be prioritising funding for organisations that are led by people from Black and minoritized communities. So please tell us whether that is the case for you, and also give us some examples of how you involve young people in your work, not just at service delivery level, but also in terms of your strategy and the direction of your organisation. And then we move on to some top tips Again, these are noted in the application guidance notes, but just to touch on a few here, I would recommend focusing your ask. So really thinking about what your organisational need is and how we can help you achieve that, or how we can help you address that. So rather than putting an application in for lots of different elements of work, really think about, you know, where we can really help you, and focus your application. The second one is providing evidence. So I think we all know that an application is always stronger with evidence. So if you can give us some evidence of your organisational need, then please do. That might look like a SWOT analysis that you've recently done with your team, for example, or it might be some feedback from staff. Another tip is be realistic. So think about the costs of your work. You may need to get some quotes. Think about the timeframes and also the resource that you have internally. Think about what resource is needed to do this work effectively, and also, do you have capacity to sort of participate in the learning element of the programme as well? So it's worth me saying that all successful applicants will be supported by the foundation team, but you will be expected to contribute to biannual learning sessions. And then the last one is make sure you're ready. And this is really about sort of taking time to reflect on your organisational needs and your capacity. And we have listed some tools in the guidelines to sort of help you think through this process. Finally, in terms of timelines, if we just go on to the next slide, please, Christina. Thank you. As I mentioned, the fund is open until the end of October, but any organisations that would like a decision before Christmas this year, you will need to apply by the 31st of August, and we will come back to you with a decision before the end of the year. And it's probably also worth me just pointing out that we will be running a second Q&A session on the 22nd of September. And then I think we can move on to the frequently asked questions. Next slide, please, Christina. Thank you. So here we've got a few questions that we've been asked in the past and that we have been receiving since the launch of the fund this year. So Sally and I will talk through some of these, and if you have any questions yourselves that you'd like to ask to us, please use the chat function and we'll come to those afterwards. So Sally, do you want to take the first one? Can the Resilience Fund support programme delivery and programme development, or programme development?
Yeah, so the simplest answer to this is no. That's not the purpose of this funding. So what we really want to do, as Claire's outlined, is support you to develop your organisation, and that could look like, you know, anything. It could look like any of those building blocks that we've outlined. So it could be, you know, a strategy development piece, a governance piece. It could be about your staff team or leadership development, or perhaps about your kind of infrastructure and your IT system. So there's a whole host of areas that the fund can support, but programme delivery and programme development isn't the focus. The one exception to that, I would say, would be where you might have a really stretched senior leadership team, or perhaps CEO, who is doing a lot of programme delivery, and that is hampering your ability as a leadership team or a leader to focus on organisational resilience and sustainability. And what we have done in year one is fund kind of backfill programme posts. So essentially somebody to take some of that work off your hands and to enable you to be freed up. Oh, sorry, just went on mute. The really crucial thing there is that you make the impact of the additional time that you will have is the impact of the funding, as opposed to the impact that the program person is going to have, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks, Sally. So second question is there any flexibility on lowering or increasing the income thresholds? So you'll see from the eligibility criteria that we've set the threshold at 100,000 to 1.5 million. And yeah, quite simply, I guess the simple answer to that question is that there isn't any flexibility on that. We do review it year on year. So yeah, things may change next year, but I guess the reason behind that is that we want to partner with organisations that are ready to do this kind of organisational development work and also have capacity to participate in the learning programme. And we're working on a theory, I guess, that organisations of this size will have the infrastructure in place to be able to do this and do it well. Sally, do you want to take, can the fund address staff capacity issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of addressed this in a way in my answer to the first question. You know, often staff capacity issues can be a key barrier to putting in the work that is needed to kind of focus on organisational development and resilience. So things like that kind of backfill example and roles that will help free up the senior leadership team. We've had examples of existing staff being moved from part-time to full-time contracts, for example, through our funding, enabling them to take on take more of the kind of burden off the CEO. So yes, I think the answer is yes. But what we're not looking to do is to, you know, as I said before, you know, simply help organisations to employ additional programme or project staff in order to grow frontline delivery.
Great, thank you. Are multi-user charities at a disadvantage? So I guess these are organisations that are supporting more than young people from Black and minoritized communities. And I think multi-user organisations are more than welcome to apply, first off. I think you would just need to define, you know, what the work that you're doing with young people from Black and minoritized communities, and we'll be looking to see that it plays a meaningful part in your overall work. I guess, yeah, it would take you back to the eligibility criteria. We are looking to support organisations where services are being delivered for that target beneficiary group. So we'll be looking to understand from your applications what proportion of your work is taken up by that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Sally.
No, I mean, I would say you're not at a disadvantage, but there are lots of examples of that, I think, from the first year where the focus was different, so it's not directly comparable, but you know, we were looking at the proportion of organisations' work that was focused on kind of youth employment and employability, and we have certainly funded charities where there's a real mix of activities going on, but what we want to see is that that this is a kind of sizable part of your work and a kind of core part of your offer, and not something that is a a kind of afterthought or an add-on or a kind of minor part of your work. So hopefully that gives you a guide. And then the last question is about how we'll evaluate the projects and the programme as a whole. So in terms of kind of at a programme level, we're working with an organisation called the Social Innovation Exchange. They've come on board as our learning partner, and they have helped us to put together the learning programme, but they're also supporting us with the kind of learning and evaluation at programme level. Then you would meet, I think initially, with your partnerships manager within the team, so that would be Kim, and then again at a 6-month point, and then at the end of the first year you would be submitting a kind of a written report, kind of reviewing the progress that you'd made at the end of the first year against the objectives that you'd set out at the start, and then the same process in the second year. So again, a kind of a verbal catch up at 6 months, and then an end of year written report. And then alongside that, there are 2 learning events a year, so 4 in total, where the whole cohort will come together. And in terms of kind of understanding evaluation and understanding whether this is the right thing for us to be doing and whether this is working, it will, I think that story will emerge from a combination of all of those conversations and all of those touch points.
Great, thank you, Sophie. So I think that brings us on to the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, I think Christina is managing our chat function.
I am indeed. I really do apologise for my very clumsy managing of the of the IT, but I can kick us off with a few questions. We do have quite a few, so I will start off with a question that has popped up a couple of times, and sort of what is so what does it mean to be led by the Black and minoritized communities? Do we take into consideration both the proportion of trustees as SMT or just SMT or trustees?
Yeah, sure, I can take that one. So we have included a bit of a definition of that in the funding guidelines, so do have a look, but we're defining led by as a minimum of 70% of the Board of Trustees and at least 51% of senior staff. And that's in line with UBLA's definition as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. And then in terms of mental health and well-being, are we looking for organisations that just support young people with their well-being, or are we looking at organisations that support just with mental health, or is it a combination?
I mean, I think mental health and well-being is, I guess mental well-being is, they're intrinsically linked, aren't they? So I think, yeah, if an organisation is delivering mental health services or mental well-being services for young people, they would fit the criteria of the fund.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the point being that these don't have to be young people who have a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. You know, you could be supporting young people's well-being in a kind of much more preventative and a broader way than that.
Brilliant. And then sort of connected to that, we have organizations that take a holistic approach to supporting young people during transition points. So that sort of falls into that definition of providing mental health and well-being services to young people. Do we have a specific age range for working with young people?
No, we don't. We haven't defined a specific age range for this fund. Generally, our work, if we think about our work across the foundation, we are working with young people probably from, I would say, 8 up to 30. We would consider them broadly as young people.
Brilliant.
We haven't defined a specific age range.
Great. I've got someone else asking whether they'd be eligible if mental health support of young people from Black and minoritized communities is only one strand of the work rather than the whole organization's focus.
So hopefully we answered that one earlier, but yes, you would be. Tell us about what that picture looks like though for you, and how big of a strand it is, you know, why it forms part of the work, why it forms part of your work, and kind of and your overall impact. But yes, absolutely, you'd be eligible.
Excellent. So then in terms of finances and incomes, are they, so we've got an organisation that is planning to go for the August deadlines. Can they use last year's accounts on the Charity Commission whilst they audit this year's accounts?
So we will, when we come to assess applications, we will go to the Charity Commission website and look for the latest annual accounts that have been published on there, and that will be where we take your income from.
So obviously there might be some organisations who are in that kind of audit phase at the moment, or who are getting ready to publish your accounts. So if your turnover if the turnover in your latest published accounts changes between your application or soon after you submit your application and before you've had a decision back, because you've published a new set of accounts, just let us know. So that would be an example where it would be helpful for you to get in touch with us and just flag that up, so that we can understand why the two numbers don't match up, and we would take the am I right, Claire, that we would take the latest
the latest
information, so it would be the new accounts rather than the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant, thank you, Sally. I know that we've just sort of touched on this, but would you mind sort of one of you briefly run us through again what kind of reporting are we accepting from grantees?
Do you want to take that, Claire?
Yeah, I can do. So when a partner becomes a partner, I guess, we will have some initial sort of one-to-one catch-ups to, there's an element of sort of relationship building. So we will be very keen to come out and visit you and get a sense of your organisation and what you're doing. In terms of actual formal reporting, we are requesting an annual written report, but as Sally said, we will be looking to have a phone call or a meeting with you around the 6-month mark to just have a catch up really and understand how the project's progressing. And it's also an opportunity for you to flag any challenges or risks at that point as well. So that's in terms of reporting. So it would be an annual written report, and you would be funded over 2 years. So we would be expecting 2 annual written reports, and then there's the learning programme element, which is outside of the reporting, but I guess it does come into the sort of impact and the evaluation side of things. And this is really an opportunity to bring partners together to network and collaborate and share experiences. So we are looking to hold 2 sessions in each funded year where you would come together, and potentially, depending on interest and capacity, we may be able to offer some additional sessions, but we'll play that by ear.
And there's a question in the chat on the learning programme about kind of further information and kind of how we're envisioning that. And I might just ask Christina to take that, because you've been so heavily involved in designing it for year 1.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think both Sally and Claire mentioned we have kicked off the first year of the Resilience Fund last week, and we actually think from the very beginning of the Resilience Fund, from the ideation sessions and so on, we really wanted to have a space, give you some time as organizations to really think about what it means to be resilient in your own organizations, but even wider. So how does, for example, your personal resilience or your organization's resilience then feed into the wider sector and how you support young people? And the way that we've envisaged that is to bring partners together twice a year in a fairly, well, I'm not going to say formal, because I don't think it was a formal meeting, but the cohort comes together twice a year to learn from each other. And I think that came across so well last week, when partners from 10 widely different organizations came together and talked about their common challenges, and there was plenty of that. And you know, those relationships started forming, and those organizations are now meeting separately from us to sort of you know, give themselves that time to sort of learn from others, think about those important strategic questions, and really you know, learn from each other as much as they can. And we're hoping to do that twice a year. So throughout the 2 years of partnership, you'll be meeting 4 times a year, so 4 times over 2 years. And well, the second sort of, we've done this first session, which was mostly around resilience and what does it mean to be resilient personally in your organizations, and then how does that feed into the wider systems. And then we're envisaging the second session to be an action learning set, most likely, and that will be focused on one particular topic. So for example, you know, financial sustainability was a huge topic at our previous meeting, sort of governance and how we make sure that those trustees and our boards of trustees are really engaged with the work that we do and support the resilience of the organization. There was a really interesting point around staff and sort of how does individual staff resilience feed into wider organizational resilience. So I think the learning program, I think, in my very humble view, is probably just as important as the actual project, if not a bit more, because it really gives you time to step away from your desk and really sort of embrace the challenge of figuring out what being resilient means. So I hope that sort of answers your questions. I know I've rambled a bit, but yeah, I think it's a really exciting development that sort of works hand in hand with your project.
Thanks, Christina.
I feel I've just missed a question from one organization, so let me sort of post that to you before I scroll past it again. Someone's asking whether we would fund infrastructure organizations supporting other Black and minoritized community organizations, or does the organization need to be involved in direct delivery?
So I think the answer to that question is that they do need to be involved. You do need to be involved in direct delivery. So it's no problem if you are an infrastructure organisation, and we've got one, in fact, in our year 1 cohort. But there needs to be an element of your work that is about direct delivery for young people.
Thank you, Sally. One question from our Q&A is whether we would prefer the fund to be spent solely by the organisation that applies, or could they use it to fund a partnership programme delivered by themselves and another organisation? Do
you want to take that one, Claire?
Yeah, I mean, I think partnership, this was something that came out from the session we held last week. You know, resilience for a lot of people is about working together and building partnerships and building resilience within the communities that people are working in. So I think we'd definitely be open to an application that is helping an organisation to become more resilient by building partnerships. However, I think you just need to, there'd need to be one lead organisation who makes the application, and it would be that organisation needs to meet all of the eligibility criteria. Does that answer the question?
Brilliant, thank you. One more question in the chat is, will we consider funding organisations whose activities demonstrably improve young people's mental health and well-being, even when the focus is not exclusively on the mental health area?
I think the answer to that would be yes. If they're improving mental health and well-being of young people through any sort of activity, then yeah, that would be eligible.
Yeah, and I think the word demonstrably in there is really important, actually. So if you've got evidence for that, do bring it out in your application, because that's going to really strengthen it.
Yeah.
Great. And then one other question would be, is it less competitive to go for the 31st of August deadline?
Interesting. So last year, I think we had more applications in wave 1 than in wave 2. Is that correct?
No, it's the other way around, Sally.
Other way around. Okay. Well, there we go.
Only slightly more.
Yeah.
It was quite balanced. So I'm not sure we could say that it would be less competitive to apply in one or the other, to be honest.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I've got one more. Oh, actually, a couple more questions. Do we have a specific amount of funding set out for the August 31st deadline and then for the second deadline?
So we are looking to select 5 organisations from the first deadline, and then 5 organisations from the later deadline. So overall, we'll be working with 10 organisations. So yes, there is funding attached to those.
Yeah, so it's 50-50 essentially.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Sort of following up from an earlier question now. So when thinking about the criteria around delivering services targeted at young people, Black and minoritized communities, and by targeted we mean more than 50% of the organization's beneficiaries, does this mean beneficiaries of the whole organization, or for the strand of work an organization is wanting, or basically the strand of work that sort of relates best to this, to the Resilience Fund's focus? Does that make sense? So do we mean, so the 50% of the organization's beneficiaries, is that for the whole organization or just the strand of work that relates to mental health and well-being?
That's probably one for you, Claire.
Okay, so I'm just rereading the criteria for myself. So deliver services targeted at young people from Black and minoritized communities, and by targeted we mean more than 50% of your organisation's beneficiaries. So yes, I think that relates to the services, the mental health services. No, Sally's looking at me.
I think we might need to come back to you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my reading of it would be that it's organisation wide, but I think it's probably clear that we don't have a kind of we don't have a clear answer for you on that. So that's something that we can review, and we'll look to clarify perhaps in the guidelines as well.
Yes, please, Olivia. So sorry, that would be fantastic if you could email us the question. And I think if there's no other questions, I can move us to the contact details.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was really great. It's good to have such an engaged audience and so many questions to answer. So thank you. So yeah, just to close up, if there are either things that come up that we haven't covered here, or things that are really specific to your organisation that you want to run past us, please do get in touch. You can get in touch via either of these email addresses. The info@berkeleyfoundation.org.uk is regularly monitored, and then obviously Kim will be picking up her emails as well. Equally, if you know, once you get stuck into looking at the criteria and the guidelines, or when you're making the application itself, if there are things that you get stuck on or are struggling with, do let us know. So we're very kind of open and happy to support you through the process, you know, and even to have kind of a quick call to kind of sense check whether your idea is a good fit or not. So yeah, very happy to do any of that.
And just one last thing from me before we close, going back to the online application process, we do recommend you draft your responses in advance, because the form does need to be completed in one sitting. There is an option to save the application and come back to it. So we have provided the application questions in a Word document so that you can start drafting those, and then once you've got the full application ready, you can copy and paste those over to the form and submit it online. And yeah, just to reiterate what Sally said, thanks again everyone for joining us, and we look forward to receiving your applications.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.